Well, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. And you know what? When I was thinking about our topic today,
Uh-huh.
I'm now on a mission that every time we have a topic, I'm going to find some way to use my photo albums because I've invested so much time in organizing them by year.
Uh-huh.
So today I'm bringing a photo of
Okay.
you and I. This is in the 1996 to 98 album, just for time stamping. And so it's this
Oh,
photo.
I knew it.
You knew what I was going to bring? Well, first of all, look how youthful and vibrant we look. Okay, so for those people who are not sure what this is Robin and I at the end of running the Marine Corps marathon, my one and only marathon. You've done many of them, obviously, but I was thinking about this topic, I thought what an appropriate thing because there's nothing that to me exemplifies more starting before you're ready than me becoming a runner
Yeah.
because I had
Yeah.
never run. I never ran. I mean,
Yeah.
I ran because we played soccer in high school, and I ran if I was trying to get away from something or
Right, right,
someone,
right,
but like not for leisure. And you asked me to run a marathon and or train for it, and I thought, well, hey, let's do it. And after all
right.
my toenails fell off at the end of that, that was my last
Yeah.
marathon.
Yeah. That was such a great experience. And I tell people all because I also was not a runner. And I can't exactly remember. I think it was like maybe there was a like the Susan Komen 5K or something that a bunch of people
That's
from
right.
work did. And I did
Yes,
that. And then you kind of get connected in with these other runners, you start running. And like it is a slippery slope. That is those 5Ks are like a gateway drug to
wait a
a
minute.
lifetime of
I
yeah.
love, wait a minute. On the next page is us running the Susan G. Komen
Oh,
breast cancer run with our then boyfriends, my now husband. But I did become a runner. And so I'm going to sort of draw on that as we talk today
yeah.
about this idea of, sort of our theme is taking action before you're ready. And so it made me think about that.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
love the idea of bringing a picture from your photo album every time because you definitely like we established in the first episode, you are the historian and you're just so organized. So I think it's a great way to highlight both of those
Yes.
strengths. So, all right. So starting before you feel ready. So what I love about this topic, it's so often it comes up in conversations, whether they're with my like colleagues or clients or friends or something that people kind of have this thing on loop. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm not ready yet.
Hmm.
And I'm really interested when people say that to dig in on like what are they expecting ready to feel like? And is there anything that waiting on that feeling is holding them back from enjoying or achieving right now? So I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah. I was thinking about it. There's this sort of phrase that, I think some people are sort of in pursuit of perfection or readiness. Everybody has a different version of this, right? My husband always says, like, I'm still doing research, like, no matter what he's,
Right.
like, it could be buying sneakers, it could be, planning a vacation or whatever. He's like, you're, doing all the research. And I'm a more impulsive person.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, you know, it might look like I am, oh, I don't care. I do want to be ready. I do want it. But I think to me, it reminds me of this idea. One of my colleagues did their dissertation on this theory, this about self-efficacy.
Mhm.
Albert Bender is this researcher. And his theory of self-efficacy is this idea that mastery experiences come from sort of the process of trying to to master something.
Yeah.
So,
Of
the first time
doing
you do
it
anything
badly. Yeah.
right, exactly. And so to me, like I love this idea of when I was thinking about our conversation, start, stumble, strengthen. This is
Yeah.
sort of to me this progression. And so I think, for most people, you don't actually need confidence to begin. So when you made that comment, to me, what you talked about is you have to make a decision,
Hmm.
right? I am going to do this. So when people say they're not ready, to me it's not necessarily about their confidence. They just haven't made the decision yet to start.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Yeah. 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 And so I remember so I feel like this idea of like committing and starting something before I'm like technically ready. It's something we have in common. I would also consider myself pretty impulsive. And and at times I try to use that almost to like my advantage. Like once I sign up for a race, for example, and pay the money, like once I've paid the money, I'm doing it. No matter what happens, like I'm
Right.
committed. So, and you always, whenever you sign up or make that decision, it's always before you feel ready. But
Yeah, and well, it reminds me of like some weird like rituals like people have. I can think of even myself where like if I was ever going to try to like maybe tighten up my diet or my nutrition, I had to start on Sunday. It was like
oh
obedience,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? It's sort of that idea of like I have to start on Sunday. And the truth is like if you really have made a decision, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is.
Right.
But I think we have a lot of examples, frankly, of sort of action coming before confidence. I think about this podcast and one of the things when we were working on the design of it and I was like, well, we need this and we need this, we need this. And I remember at one point you were like, listen, let's just start it and like it'll just get better. And I was like, yeah, like she's like, you're like, well, look back on the first one and be like, oh my God, can you even believe, and it's
Can
just
you
going to get better.
believe it? It was so
I
awful.
think
Yeah.
if we'd waited, we probably wouldn't be doing this right now and be at our fourth episode. But, it's for me, it's like anything, which is when people aren't ready to make a decision, usually what's underneath that is
Yeah.
fear of failure, fear of getting it wrong, fear of making mistakes, fear of it
Yeah.
not
Or
looking
just
right. Right.
or just like not wanting to be uncomfortable. I think that like what so often it comes down to, and actually I think you had an Instagram about this recently, but you know, we're hardwired to pursue pleasure, avoid pain, and use the least amount of effort possible. Like that is our like
Mhm.
biology, our hardwiring. So when I hear people say, I do think sometimes people have fear, but more often than not, it's like that's going to make me uncomfortable, and I don't like feeling uncomfortable, so I don't want to do it.
I totally get that. In fact, I had a conversation with someone the other day. They were sharing with me that they were worried about someone that we both know in common and saying that this person was really not in a good place. And when we were talking about why they were not in a good place, they're going through some major life events. And I remember saying back to them, like, they're supposed to be uncomfortable. Like
Yeah,
these are major life events. And I think sometimes I didn't mean that in a way like I don't have empathy
right,
or
right, right,
that I don't understand it. But to some extent, we have to recognize that hard things are hard for a reason. And I agree with you. I think across the board, we avoid things that are uncomfortable because it doesn't make us feel steady. And I think one of the things you have to build up if you're going to take action before you're ready is you have to have a tolerance for discomfort. And I
right.
just don't think a lot of us do.
Right. Well, and so I think the good news though is that getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is actually like a muscle that you can strengthen the more often you put yourself in those uncomfortable situations and realize like I survived this, I came out the other end, I learned something, it opened up some avenue,
Right.
and that'll give you kind of the drive possibly to like take it on in the future. So, the reason to me this topic was so important is like going back to something we talked about last time around regret and actually fear of regret later in our life. And what I worry about is that people let this kind of like undefined feeling of readiness prevent
Mm.
them from doing the things that they would otherwise really enjoy or want or feel proud of themselves for doing. And we know kind of like the only thing at the end of that road is regretting, like I should have done this, I should have done this earlier. So that's why I feel like so passionate about this is just really encouraging people to just try, be uncomfortable, do it badly, and see what you learn from it, because that's the only way you're going to move forward on those big things that you
You made me think of two quotes, neither of which are attributable to me, but that I thought of as you were
want.
talking. One is, you've survived 100% of your hardest days,
Yeah.
right? So I love that quote. But I think the other is this idea of, sort of waiting feels responsible, but
Yeah.
it's really fear wearing a better outfit.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I love that because to me, like, there's value in preparation. Like, There absolutely is value in preparation. I can't tell you how many things I've bought on impulse on Amazon, and they
Oh,
come and they are so not what I needed. Like I can't
yeah.
even, right? Like, and my husband's always like, "Well, did you read the details?" Or like, you know, and I'm
No.
like, right, you know. So I always say, like, some people, everybody has their different vices. I love a good click to cart. But this idea of like, waiting does feel responsible. Like maybe I should have read the details. Maybe I should
Yeah.
have checked out a couple of reviews and could have figured out that instead of those being X, it was Y, it's sort of that kind of thing. But I do think that like when you think about this thing that, in the research, there's something called action bias, which is that what you talked about, which is that actually taking action is the way to reduce your anxiety about starting. Like
Yeah.
that's actually the thing. It sounds counterintuitive, but like if I'm afraid to start, actually starting will make me less afraid of starting.
I know. Yes, I know. It's fascinating. And the confidence comes from doing it, not from like building up some kind of imaginary, imaginary feeling like in anticipation of it. So,
Yeah.
you hit on something that I wonder if there might be a takeaway here for us and for the people who are listening, which is there there are certainly times when my impulsivity has gotten me into trouble. Like I have regretted doing things that if I had just given myself, a minute or a day or whatever to think about it, I wouldn't have done that. So I think part of like the number one skill here that, or maybe not the number one, but like a starting place might be like, how do you sort things into those buckets? Things that are just worth going for before you feel ready. And those things that are like, no, this is worth a little time to do the research. So what do you think, like, do you have any mechanisms that you use to kind of think about like what goes in what category?
Yeah. So I think, I think it depends on what I call sort of two things that come to mind. Number one is sort of consequence of error.
Yes.
Okay, right. So to me, that's something I think a lot about. What is the consequence of error? So there's a very big difference between buying a pair of shoes that you didn't realize were, Velcro instead of, tie
Right.
for
Right.
yourself, which I've done. And, committing to a job that
Right.
you didn't know the full breadth of, or, whatever it might be. So to me, consequence of error is something that I really think about. I sort of put vacations almost in the middle of this because vacations cost a lot of money.
Mhm.
I've never really had a bad vacation because if I'm with people I love and I'm not, I'm sort of having a time away from my regular everyday life. I can make the best of any situation. But, things that have a high cost, value, that things that have an economic impact, is another factor. So the consequence of error is one thing I think about, but also sort of the actual financial cost, right? To
Yeah.
me, is there an unintended, is there a risk? I see all these things on Instagram of people who are like, oh, I quit my job and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And I'm like, wow, that's like, I would never quit a job without another job lined up, right?
Right.
Because to
Right.
me, that's not a risk I'm willing to take. But lots of people do it, and lots of people are, tell you how successful they were. So I think it's personal for each person what your
Yeah.
tolerance level is. But those are the two things that come to mind.
Yeah, I love that as a framework. And I agree that it's personal. So everyone's risk tolerance, of course, is different. Their financial
Right.
situation is different. And knowing yourself and knowing where you are, and then having a mechanism for yourself that you can kind of sort into these two categories and not, I do think we're all a little vulnerable to some of like, I'll call it marketing. It's not really marketing, but like some of that, just that cultural conditioning around there is something really, I don't know, like attractive or like inspirational about people who make these big leaps and then make it work. But there's so many stories out there that are the exact opposite. And so
Yeah.
just kind of like knowing, knowing where you are. I also think if you're someone that feels like you have a bunch of these kind of accumulated or unmet desires or wishes, digging in to understand why, like why haven't you pursued some of these things that you could have given the time available and the financial resources available. If you are somebody that feels like, oh, you have a big long list of stuff that you will do someday,
Mhm.
is it worth really just kind of taking a look at that, a hard look at that list and saying, hey, is there anything I can move to the bucket of, let me just go for it,
You
to
you
get
made
some
me think
stuff
of one
going?
other thing then I'd add. In
Okay.
addition to a consequence of error, I would add visibility,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I think, particularly when I think about the sort of more creative space that I know I've tried to be leaning into, whether it be this podcast, you and I both write Substacks, or whether it be my news, whatever it is, the visibility of making I don't want to say making a mistake, because we could do a whole nother episode on how to deal with making mistakes, but this idea of like visibility of it being imperfect, visibility of it, this, like, how every time you send a high stakes email, how we all like read back our emails after we send them. This is
Yeah.
like, I don't know, does anybody written about this phenomenon where everybody writes an email, reads it multiple times, clicks send, and then goes to their sent and rereads it?
Reads it again. Yes.
Right. And I swear to you that I do this like everyone. And I catch some sort of a weird error every time. And it always seems to be that when I'm writing like somebody of significance. And so this idea of like visibility, I think, is another thing that can be sort of a restraining force, or something that would people consider. But something you said I wanted is a lesson I often try to teach my children. And I don't know if it's universal or if you'd agree with it, but I also try to teach them that you can always change your mind.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think there's a piece of this conversation that is this idea that even once you've made a decision, you've committed to something, you've decided to start on Monday, if it doesn't work for you, and that could be an action, it could be a job, it could be, a podcast, and you say, listen, this isn't what I thought it would be, or it doesn't feel right, or I'm not ready yet, because now that I've been doing it, I'm not, I can see that it's not what I want it to be. You can stop, you can
Right.
pivot. So I think this idea of being able to change your mind, and whether or not whatever it is you've chosen gives you that, matters just as much.
Yeah, I no, and I love that. And there is so much that falls into that category of you can always change your mind. And I'm working with somebody right now who is interested in becoming a chef,
Oh,
cooking professional.
right.
And so in talking about, and she speaks like just glowingly about food and loves the whole environment and all the things. And I asked, but she has like a regular corporate job. And so right now, so she kind of has this fantasy of just like quitting the whole thing and becoming a chef. And so when we started down the path, they're like, well, what are the steps? Like maybe taking a cooking class. And like before you kind of fully commit to culinary school. And there was aversion to that. Like, oh no, I don't really want to do that. But so it's interesting, like, okay, why? Let's dig into that a little bit. Because I think there is for some people, there is just so much like romance kind of wrapped up in the idea of like quitting and kind of doing this big thing and having it work out great. But so often you hear people who like go through these programs and then realize, like, wait a second, I like going to restaurants and eating. I don't want to be in the kitchen cooking. And it's better to find that out if you can do a couple of these baby steps, like so give yourself a chance to change your mind, get some experience, and then have a
Right.
data point that you can change your mind about it later.
You know what it makes me think about? Someone gave me a beautiful compliment the other day. They said that they're like, you could be a, fill in the blank. And it was a famous podcaster, a famous, whatever. I said, oh, wow. I said, that's, fantastic. And then what I said back to her was, I don't have that hustle in me. And what I meant by that was, I think this idea that you just sort of, made me think about, which is like, there's a limit to how hard we want to work to do the thing, right? So it's also
Yeah.
like the people who are successful, what people don't see when you see the end product is you don't see all the earlier versions. I used to tell this to people when I was helping to train school administrators, and I would come in and I started to get messages that I was, projecting a level of excellence or perfectionism in my leadership, I would always say to them, like, you're looking at a version of me that is like 15 years in. Like, you didn't
Hmm.
see the year one, new principal version of me where I made mistake after mistake after mistake. Like, you're seeing, like, I've put in the work and made and had lots of hard lessons. So you're seeing the end product. And so what you sort of reminded me is like, I think sometimes we see a lot of end product and we want
Hmm.
to jump we want to skip a lot of steps to the end product.
Right.
But the reality
Right.
is you've got to do the hustle. You've got to do the things that come before that. And
Yeah.
that a lot of people are willing to do it anymore.
Yeah. Well, and being honest with yourself about that. I
Yeah.
think there's, to me, this kind of ties with with what we talked about last time about those stories that we tell ourselves.
Hmm.
So when I'm in conversations with people that are kind of in that genre of, having this very clear vision of what would be amazing, but not
Hmm.
really wanting to go through the river of misery to get there.
Hmm.
I think it's totally fine to be a dreamer and fantasize about that, but be honest with yourself about why you're not taking action. And the reason is like you just don't often, it's just you just don't want it enough. You don't want to do the hard work because it is it, it is putting those reps in that kind of get you to the place where you can look so polished.
Yeah, there's this woman, her name is Teresa Amabile. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. And she wrote this book called The Progress Principle. And in the book, she talks about this idea that even small wins build motivation and confidence. And so a
Mm,
lot of what I think about when I listen to what you're sharing is like, competence isn't inherited, it's accumulated.
yeah,
And so you have to sort of, you know, you can't just keep waiting to be the person that's going to do the thing. You got to just do the thing. Maybe becoming that person is the actual thing. And I think this idea of what progress looks like. I mean, I love a good before and after. I mean, it could be a before and after,
me
a
too.
physical transformation, or like I love watching hoarders. Like I love a good
Oh,
like
and then they
Reno
clean all
show.
the
Like,
stuff out.
right. I
Yeah,
love signs of progress. I love
yeah,
it. I mean, I just love when there's like, it was this and now it's that.
yeah,
And I think that we sort of have to think of like every one of us has a first draft, right?
yeah.
And got to do a first draft. So even for the client you talked about, maybe she doesn't want to take a cooking class, but like maybe she could invite some people and say, listen, I want to invite you over and I want to prepare a meal for you and I'd love to get your feedback. I mean, you have to sort of start with something.
Right.
And I just think the whole idea of having a first draft, people sometimes struggle with. I know I do too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. So, you know, when you think about kind of tangible examples, things that people might be facing right now, they have an idea, but they're on the fence. Like, what are some things that you think, like, just kind of people like us might be holding back from taking that leap before they feel ready?
Yeah, so I think sort of going back to this idea, I love this framework of like start, stumble, strengthen.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is you have to make a decision, like I'm going to do this. And that could be something as simple as, if you want to go back to school and get another degree, I'm going to start by applying. If you want to sort of pursue a different area of expertise in your field, I'm going to, reach out to someone who I know that does this well and see if I can have coffee with them. It's like you have to start by making a decision and taking action around that decision. And instead of it being the end goal decision, it's like one step. What's the phrase? Instead of looking at the whole staircase, just look at the next step, right? So I think that's the first thing. The second is be prepared to stumble a little bit. And so that stumble can look different for different people. It doesn't have to be a visible mistake. It doesn't have to be, an error but be ready to feel out of sorts and recognize that you don't need to protect yourself from that feeling. And that feeling doesn't mean you've made the wrong decision. That's the space of learning is discomfort, right? So they talked about productive struggle. There's a whole body of research about this idea of productive struggle, that when you are in that stumble phase, that's actually part of your growth. And the third thing then I would say is strengthen, which is, repetition, like we're doing here with this podcast. Every week, I feel like it gets a little bit better. There are some parts where we're like, oh, I wish that was better. Or I wish that was better. But, evidence comes from repetition and confidence comes from repetition. And so I sort of think, maybe think about a start, stumble, strengthen sort of mindset and be prepared for all of those different feelings as you go.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, of course, I love alliteration, anything that comes in packages of three. I think it's great. So I
Right.
think what comes up a lot so most of the people I work with are mid-career.
Mm.
and a mix of men and women. I would also say most of the people are what I call purpose driven. They're people who are really motivated in their career by having some kind of positive impact on.
Mm.
So often where I see people kind of bump into this idea of readiness is around a mid-career shift, either leaving one job and pursuing something adjacent or starting a new career altogether or going back to school for something. So there can be these roadblocks that we feel in midlife where we start asking ourselves the question like, wait, is this it? Like, I can see like the years I have ahead are starting to become less than the years I have behind. Like, is this it? Like, is this what I was supposed to do? And people are asking themselves questions like that. And it can drudge up some of this stuff about like, well, I'll spend more time thinking about it when things calm down at work. And I'm just not as busy. Or, well, I don't think that would ever pay as much. And so I really need to kind of think through my finances. So there become like a lot of
Hmm.
hurdles, I think, to people in midlife making some really it's very common, I think, for many of us mid-career to be asking ourselves these questions about like, is this really the way I want to spend the last, couple of years of like the of my career. So I
Yeah.
think readiness comes up, I think, around career stuff a lot. I have a funny one that I'm like dealing with right now. It's minor in the scheme of life, but my car, as you know,
Oh
is
my God, why have you not gotten a new car? This is,
well, so it is all of these things. You can do a little mini coaching here on me. But for everybody else that doesn't know my car is old enough to vote. And
it's a
so
really nice car once upon a time.
it was back in the day. So what happened here is that, like we bought this car. It's a like a small Lexus SUV, and it's just like served me well. I'm very comfortable in it. It's every single time I've ever wanted to go someplace, it starts right up. But you can imagine after 18 years and three children, I mean, like we brought Marin home from the hospital in this car. So I mean, like it's old. I
Yeah,
mean,
but don't you have like duct tape holding your glove
yeah.
box?
Well, it's not holding the glove box, but like all of the dash started to peel off the vinyl on it, and so we
Mhm.
covered it with stickers, and it's just trashed. I mean, like it's it's
Right.
it's totally trash, like on the inside, but it still runs really well. So I am now stuck. I'm like legitimately stuck. Brian for years has been saying like it's time to get you a new car. What do you want? And I'm like, oh, I don't know what I want. I got to think about it. And I'm still in that cycle. He's like, no kidding. He's like, I'm going next week. What car do you want?
Good.
And I'm
Yes.
still hesitating because, and I think, well, partly because now I realize, you know, normal people make a car decision maybe like what, every 5 or 6 years. And people,
Right. This is another. You're going to have this one till you're like 70. So you need, it's a big decision. I get it.
decision. Like normal people, it's a much smaller decision. But so that's
Right.
one thing. And there's so many cars out there. Maybe I would be happy on a different car, even though I love this car. Because like right now, honestly, I just want to go to the dealership where we bought it and be like, just give me the latest one of the same thing because I love it so much. So I really need to maybe do it like to your point about just start. Maybe go do a couple of test drives, see what it would feel like to be in a clean car with all of the things functioning.
Yeah. I mean, as listen, I drove my last car for until it turned off, basically.
Yeah.
I was driving home from work one night. I was driving home from work a couple of years ago, and it started to shake while I was driving. And I was coming home from a late board meeting. It's not all these things happen when I'm coming home late. And I remember calling my husband and saying, I'm driving it straight to the like the repair shop because I don't know if I'll get it there if I don't just keep moving, right? It was
Yeah.
like so I'm one of those people, and now I have a newer car, but same thing. I know I'll drive this one for another 15 years, but I was forced to make that decision. So like, because I had a rental, and I was like, I had to get a car, but so I don't know what would have happened if I had a little bit of a runway. But I do think, I want to go back to something you said about this idea, though, of all these things happening in midlife. I was reading some research recently, and I want to read more about it, about this sort of, it's called the U-shaped life satisfaction model.
Hmm.
And it talks about sort of that your satisfaction in life actually bottoms out in your 40s and then rises up again. And so that's, but it's this idea because I'm always like, why is there such a phenomenon of like questioning all the decisions you've ever made? But I think it's because so much is happening in this period of life. And so the good
Yeah.
news is, like, for anybody questioning their life choices, you're going to be on the up and up eventually. But I think it's a number of things, but you're this point of like taking action, again, remember what I said, consequence of error. What if you, and economic impact. Those were the two things I shared earlier.
Yeah.
Buying is a great example of both of those things. What if I get something I don't love and
Don't
I've
love, right. And then we have this big car payment. We don't have a car payment right now and all the things. But
right.
I love that. So I think that is a great takeaway and something I really want to leave with people for today is that research around this U-shaped curve. And so if you're imagining like high levels of satisfaction, maybe you're like early 20s, early part of your career, you dip. And then, so to me, that is a great news story. And it explains a lot about why so many of us, when we're gathering with friends or at work, it feels like a lot. Like things just work feels like a lot, families a lot, all of the things it can feel overwhelming. But it
Hmm.
does, and then I look at my parents and I'm like, that, clearly like
Hmm.
I can have belief in the fact that it does in fact get better.
Yeah, I think the one sort of key takeaway I'd want to leave people with is I love this phrase. It says decide or be decided for.
Yeah,
And so not making a choice is actually a decision.
yes,
Right? So you're saying I can't make a decision. The fact that you're choosing not to buy a car that you know you need is actually the decision. And so delaying a choice or action is actually still a choice to stay exactly where you are. So decide or be decided for. That's something that I would sort of leave people with.
yeah. No, I love that. So just one last quick story. So in my late 20s, I had an opportunity to buy a horse. My
Oh,
parents had,
yes.
yeah, so they had bought a farm when I was in college, and they had space. So I bought a horse. So I really was learning how to ride and sort of like care for a horse much later in life. Like most people, like your daughter, have kind of like been riding since they were
Right.
toddlers, but that was not the case for me. So this horse, we picked it out. It was delivered to the paddock and on their farm, and we had hired a trainer, and she'd come over and she was talking us through. And I probably stood on the ground next to that horse for 40 minutes. I had a zillion questions. And finally, she just did not answer my last question. She said, at some point, you're just going to have to get on and ride him. And I was like,
Apache.
ugh,
Apache.
yes, it was Apache. But I was so afraid, and I felt like if I just got all of the information out of her, that would somehow protect me. And she was exactly right. I did get on. It was totally fine. There were plenty of bumps along the way, kind of like learning to ride him and care for him, but so, so, so worth it in the end.
I love
So
that.
yeah, so I love this topic. If anybody is feeling maybe on the fence or feeling a little stuck in this waiting to feel ready stage, please reach out to us. If you just need like a little nudge, we will be happy to do it. We are both two people who have, who've done this quite a bit and have some regrets, but also have some great wins out of it. And this has been another really fun conversation. So thank you so much.
And we will embrace you and wherever you are. This is sort of our next week
Yes.
is our topic next week is making room for people to be who they are. Which
Ooh,
as someone who thrives on being able to be my most authentic self,
yeah,
figuring out what that looks like for us, but also what it looks like in our relationships with others and work and life. How do we learn to love, people in such a way that we have enough space for to make room for our understanding of who they are. And so that's what we're going
yes.
to talk about
It's going to be a
at
good
our next.
one. It's going to be a good one. So, all right. Well, so come on back next week. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have any feedback, don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.